Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So I basically have ridden the BMW G310GS before, but I thought riding it around for an hour just wasn't good enough to give you guys a detailed review on it. So what I've done is I've gotten the BMW G310GS for the next 24 hours. And not only that, but I've got it for the next 24 hours, and the place where the motorcycle hire company was is basically in one of the most scenic areas in Australia. So not only will I be telling you guys what I think of this bike, but I'll be telling you what I think of this bike while you get to see some epic scenery and some epic roads. Like, just look at these roads. Woo! It's damn fun. Really giving this Indian-made TVS engine a run for its money. Hidden behind this BMW badge though. Does it live up to the BMW name? Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. Make sure you stick around so that you can check out what I think about this bike. An in-depth review on what I like and don't like about it. There's plenty to like and there's plenty not to like. Oh, fuck yes. Gonna be eating some Hungry Jacks before I start. Hungry Jacks is basically Burger King in the US. Good way to start this ride. There you go, kangaroo sign. Woo! We're hitting up kangaroo territory now. Anyway, so I was gonna start my vlog a bit later, just when I got to more scenic areas. But the speed limit's 90 kilometers per hour at the moment. And I've noticed straight away, as soon as I hit 90, you can really feel a bit of vibration coming through my hands and my feet. And this is something that has been reported online, and a lot of people are complaining about it heavily. Now, it's true, the vibrations are there, definitely noticing them, but are they overly bothersome? Let's just downshift. I'm now in 5th gear. When I'm in 5th gear and it's revving at 6,000 RPM, I am feeling a lot of vibration through my hands. But when I upshift to 6th, that's drastically reduced. But now the question is, because there's a lot of vibration in the 5th gear, does that mean when you increase the speed, you'll also experience the same amount of vibration in the 6th gear? Say when you're doing 110 kilometers an hour, equal to 65 miles per hour. Well, we'll just have to keep that question for a bit later when we hit up the highway, and I'll answer that one. So I've been riding this bike for about 2 hours so far today, and as soon as you sit on it, you just feel a really spongy seat with a lot of padding. But as I've been sitting on it for 2 hours, the seat is slowly shrunk down and down, and now I can just feel my ass is basically sitting on the frame. It just feels like I'm sitting on something very hard, and now my ass is quite sore. To alleviate this on an adventure touring bike, you would just stand up. But that's another problem with this bike. When I stand up, the fat petrol tank is kind of in the way and it's hitting my knees. Not only that, but just the angle at which I can stand up, I feel like there's a lot of backwards pressure. Like I'm kind of hanging backwards off the handlebars. And not just that, but the handlebars are quite low and the foot pegs are really small. It's not typical of an adventure bike like the KLR 650. The foot pegs are quite large, but on this they're pretty damn small, and I'm not liking a lot of things about it so far. I kind of just feel like I'm on a bike that it doesn't know whether it's meant to be an adventure bike or a city bike. feels more like a city bike that has kind of half-assed its way towards adventure. They've kind of just mixed it up a bit. Anyway, I'll see you guys at the location where we're heading to, and I'll give you guys an in detailed look at the bike and also talk about some of the specs, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so what do we have here? A 313cc single cylinder liquid cooled engine that produces 34 horsepower. Well, tests have been conducted and the results, 30 horsepower at the rear wheel, around 30 horsepower. Hey, how's it going? Thought I'd come bother you. You look like you know what's around here. Where's a good place to stop and just sit and look at the nice view?
Well, that's about the best, a retreat.
Down there, yeah. But you can't take your bike in there, can you?
Not into the golf course, but the retreat I think you could.
Well, what's that one?
It's a Yamaha Booster.
Oh, lovely.
But ran out of juice.
Oh, are you serious?
Bloody juice in, huh?
You want me to go get you some fuel?
No, I've already got it in.
Oh, shit. As in that kind of juice. Yeah. The battery juice. So you probably need a jump start then. How do you get this open? Oh, can you clutch start it? I could push you.
Can you?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no. So I'll just push from back here. You let me know when you want me to go. Yeah. Ready? Oh god, that is freaking heavy. Oh god. If we had a few more people, if we can get on the road, it'd be much easier, I reckon. Mate, I'm sorry I'm not fit enough. No, all the best, right? Nice to meet you, mate.
Yeah, good luck.
You too. Poor bloke. Ran out of juice. That's the last thing you want around here. So here it is, the BMW G310GS. And there's the Wiseman's Ferry in the background. So basically you can take that ferry from one side to the other side of the river, and then you've got a whole new section of Australia to explore. The problem is I can't do that today because I don't have time, because basically if I take the ferry onto the other side, it increases my time to get back to Sydney by like 3 hours, whereas from this side it's only about 2 hours. Anyway, here it is. Single cylinder 313cc engine. It's liquid cooled, fuel injected. It's got a 32.9 inch seat, 19 inch on the front, 17 inch on the rear. Overall the build quality just looks amazing. The finish is really nice. Aesthetically, this is a really good looking bike. It doesn't look like a 310cc, it looks like at least a 650cc. It really looks much bigger than it is. They've really kept this motorbike within the GS lineage, and that's mostly aesthetically, because when it comes to actually riding this bike and its performance, not overly pleased. Let's take some photos. I love the gold coloured upside down front suspension fork. Looks great. The suspension is quite bouncy on it, quite soft. So when it comes to comfort, it's like it's more comfort centered rather than performance centered, because as I'm riding this thing around, it's bouncing a lot around the corners. I'll explain that a bit more when I jump on the bike and ride around for you. But have a look at the aesthetics of this bike, and aesthetically it's quite pleasing. Love the BMW logo there, and on the handlebar. And then anyway, let's have a look at the dash. It's an LCD display. It's got a fuel indicator, gear indicator. It shows you the time, the speed digitally. It shows you the rev meter, odometer, and it's even got a shift indicator. So basically when it's time to shift, it lets you know. One thing I love about the bike is you can hold this button down and choose whether you want ABS or not. It's got tiny foot pegs, which really annoy me because it really impacts how you can stand on this bike. The engine's inverted, so the single cylinder faces the rear, and therefore the exhaust comes out the rear side, and therefore aesthetically you don't have this big pipe going across the bottom of the bike. It just comes straight out there and straight out the back. Anyway, without further ado, I need to hydrate myself with some water, and once I've hydrated myself, I'm gonna go hit up the twisty roads. Wow, what a beautiful location, man. I wish I really had time to catch that ferry, go on the other side and just enjoy these awesome twisty roads even more, but I don't have the time because I'm just such a busy man doing them reviews, you know what I mean? So on the twisting roads, man, the handling of this bike is mediocre. It's not that bad, but it's not that excellent either. It's quite mediocre because you notice straight away that the suspension is quite bouncy. It's really soft, overly soft, that as I'm going around the corners, the bounciness of the suspension kind of interferes a bit with you throwing around the bike. It's not as rigid and responsive as it should be. And then you might think, okay, well, so BMW have gone for a comfort-centered bike. You know, they've not so much focused on the ability to throw it around corners because, you know, it's meant to be an adventure bike, so who cares about its ability at cornering? As a commuter bike, it would serve an excellent purpose. But right now, what are we doing today? We're doing long distance motorcycle riding. For the whole day, I've been riding about 8 hours now. And although I haven't recorded all of the 8 hours, that's because I'm actually trying to enjoy myself and focus on the ride rather than focusing on motor vlogging. But in 8 hours of riding, has this bike stood up to the test of being a dual purpose adventure bike? Let's start off with the riding position. So the riding position's comfortable enough. The seating position is upright, handlebars are slightly raised. Although the foot pegs are really small, the position in which the foot pegs are placed allows a nice riding triangle, which feels similar to other BMW GS motorbikes, but not as comfortable as your higher end motorbikes, of course, because I mean, this one's worth 8,000 Australian dollars and the BMW 1200 GS is worth close to 25,000 Australian dollars. Anyway, let's test its 0 to 100. So 34 horsepower apparently, but with actual tests it comes down to about 30 horsepower at the rear wheel. Let's give that a try, eh? It doesn't really have that much power on it. You know, I basically was in 4th gear. I just hit 4th gear as I hit 100. Now that's not that impressive. On something like the Kawasaki Versys X300, you could still be in 3rd gear and hit 100 easily because of its twin cylinder. This one, single cylinder, it's got 6 gears, but the gears are quite short. Now that just makes it look like you've really got to rev the crap out of it to get any sort of power. Now it makes you wonder, if you got to rev it so much and the torque only comes in on the higher end of the RPM spectrum, is it going to be as effective off-road or not? Can you rev the crap out of it off-road? I've heard the Versys X300. The Versys X300, you also have to rev it quite a bit to get power out of it. I don't know what's with these adventure bikes that are so much higher end inclined. I guess what they're trying to do is they're trying to allow the rider to have fun on normal roads and in the city, and that makes sense because with the Kawasaki KLR 650, it has a lot of torque, low to mid range. It really drowns out. The torque is like this. It's like starts up here, and then as the RPMs go up, it just goes down like that. The torque just drops off, and basically with the Kawasaki KLR 650, if you're on the highway and you're already doing 110 and you try and overtake another motorist, it really struggles. It struggles to get that extra power needed to quickly overtake someone, and I hate that about it. It's really a bike that you can just cruise on, and where it lives is on off-road trails. On off-road trails it dominates, just like the Royal Enfield Himalayan It dominates off-road, but on the road it really sucks. This one, you can see they've tried to mix both. It does okay off-road, and it also does okay on-road. It'll still take me about an hour to get back to Sydney, so while I do that, let me just turn the camera off, because we've had some twisties, you've seen some nice scenery, but what you guys want to know about this bike is how is it in city traffic, how is it on the highways. That's all upcoming, because that's all on the way home. And with the suspension, another downfall is that although I can feel the suspension doing its work, when there's an unexpected bump on the road, you can feel the suspension react quite rapidly. But the problem is that although the suspension reacts and you can feel the tire bounce up, you can feel the suspension depressing, you can still feel the bump through the body of this bike, and that just gives me kind of a feeling that the build quality is not too great. The engine seems a bit clunky. Just the feeling of accelerating and the way it sounds and just how the engine reacts and the RPMs change as I'm shifting through the gears, it all just feels a bit clunky and irresponsive and just not that smooth precision that a Kawasaki Ninja 400, for example, or the Kawasaki Versys 300X delivers. The Versys 300X is quite a precision instrument. It's very precise when you're shifting gears, and you know exactly what the bike's going to do each and every moment. It's very predictable. This bike isn't so much predictable. As I'm shifting through the gears, I can't even guess what the f it's going to do. And not just that, but the front steering, the handlebars seem quite overly light. And although BMW claims that because of the way the engine is centered on this bike, it gives it a low center of gravity, allowing more weight on the front wheel, I don't really experience that. Look at this. See, look at that. I've got the fucking wobbles, like just doing this a bit. And that's quite concerning. Like, I just feel like I should slow down when I feel that. And that's not me. Like, I'm doing that right now, but when it hits a bump, you can feel it do that a bit. It's not that stable. I don't know what's wrong with this bike. There's not much stability on it. And the brakes, although it has ABS, they're not that strong. They're not that reactive. And what the f, just look at this. So all I've got on the back is a top box. Empty. It's got nothing else on it. Probably weighs no more than 5 kilos. So this shouldn't be happening. Watch this. This is really f***ing concerning. Even with me leaning forward, watch this, ready? As soon as I get the straight, I'm going to let go of the handlebars. Now, letting go of the handlebars is not dangerous. This is just to demonstrate something about this bike. It's never dangerous on any properly built motorcycle, but watch this. I let go and look at that. It's fucking wobbling. The fucking handlebars are wobbling on their own. That is really concerning, and that should not happen on any motorbike, especially one that wears a BMW badge. I mean, come on. That is extremely concerning. And just seeing that, feeling that, something I didn't pick up in my first test ride of this bike. I'm glad I hired this bike, because after seeing that, I will never buy this bike personally. Never, ever. Okie dokie, and here we are in the city. Right, so how does this bike do in the city? Let's have a look. It should be very fuel efficient, which I've noticed so far, given that the fuel indicator shows it's only gone down about 20%. Although I started out on full and I've been riding all freaking day, I've clocked about 200 kilometers so far, and it's only gone down about 25 to 30%. That sounds like some pretty freaking good fuel efficiency. So I'm just cruising around the city, cruising around at normal speeds. Current speed is 60 kilometers per hour. First thing I noticed are the mirrors, right? I'm not too pleased with the mirrors, because if you have a look how far down I have to rotate my head to actually see through the mirrors. Although the mirrors look great when they're so low like that, it's not that practical. I'd rather the mirrors be a bit higher so I can actually see what the f is going on without fully taking my eyes off the road for a good second to look down. But it's not that bothersome. This is just me being nitpicky with everything about this bike, and I have to be nitpicky so I can tell you exactly what's good and not good about the bike, because I mean that's what everyone wants to know. Alright, so here we go, we're heading on the highway now. Let's just see what the highway capabilities are like. So coming up to 100 kilometers per hour, that's 60 miles per hour. That's obviously the speed limit here. And let's have a look at one thing that I need to check straight away, which was quite concerning on the country roads back there, was the jiggliness of the handlebars. Let's have a look. Oh, it's not shaking as much as it was on the country roads, which is basically just indicates it probably was something to do with the bumpiness of the road combined with the speed. So when you combine that kind of speed with that kind of bumpiness, you can get some jiggly handlebars. So although we cannot blame the bike entirely, it still is quite concerning and shouldn't happen. The roads weren't that bumpy. It's not like I was off-roading at freaking 80 kilometers per hour, so that should not have happened. What I'm experiencing right now is handling on the highway is not too bad. It feels quite stable. I'm not feeling a lot of wind. I'm only feeling the wind above my rib cage, on my chest and on my shoulders. Not experiencing it below my rib cage, so that's always a good thing. But yeah, so the bike's easily keeping up at 100 kilometers per hour. I'm 6th gear. I'm in 6th gear doing 100 kilometers per hour. It's doing 6,000 RPM. Great thing about that is that's the same thing it does on my Kawasaki Ninja ZX6R 600cc super sports motorcycle. And I mean, no complaints when it comes to riding on highway speeds. And I do notice that I do feel a slight vibration in my hands, and that's something that a lot of people have been complaining about online about this motorbike. I wouldn't say this is enough vibration to make your hands go numb, but it is a bit uncomfortable. Oh, there we go, jitteriness again. Okay, now it's not because of the bumps. Bike's got no problems overtaking, so that's great. I kind of feel like this is more so inclined towards being a weekday type commuter bike that you can take to and from work. You can quickly get around the city, and you can do so in a moderate amount of comfort. But for this to be categorized as a fully fledged adventure bike, which BMW wisely have not categorized it as, would be an absolute joke, because this is definitely not a full-fledged adventure bike. So the current competitors for this bike stand as the Royal Enfield Himalayan, the Kawasaki KLR 650, Suzuki DRZ 450, the Kawasaki Versys 300X, which soon will be the Versys 400X. And I think once it becomes a Versys 400X, game over for everyone, just game over. And then there's also an upcoming competitor, there's rumors about it, the KTM Adventure 390. And given that the Duke 390 was such a killer of a bike, if they execute the Adventure 390 well, then it can also dominate this market. I feel with this motorbike, right, it's been a bit overpriced because of its BMW badge. It's considered a prestigious or luxury brand, and usually when you tell someone that you have a BMW, they go, oh wow, what do you do for work? You know, they think you're rich or something. But then when you go, oh, I've got a BMW and costs 8,000 Australian dollars, people aren't that impressed, yo. Not impressed. Feels good getting off the highway. Okay, so now let's just put this motorbike into perspective, okay? The BMW G310GS. Now, it's made in India. BMW designed the whole thing from Germany. Great design, great aesthetics. It just looks really pleasing to the eye. It looks amazing. But where it really lets you down is not so much riding enjoyment. It's still quite enjoyable to ride. So where it really lets you down is the performance of this bike, and just the fact that while I'm riding it, it gives me a sense that it's deeply confused on what it's supposed to be, because it doesn't do anything right.